They called me adopted trash, right to my face. Not once. Not twice. But over and over again like a sick family tradition. It wasn't just the words. It was the way they looked through me like I was an old piece of furniture collecting dust in their pristine mansion. I didn't belong. Not to them. Not to their bloodline. Not to their legacy. Be grateful we took you in, Grandma used to sneer as if I should thank her for every breadcrumb tossed my way. I grew up walking on eggshells in a house made of glass. Every step I took I heard the cracks, but if I made a sound, if I dared to speak, they'd remind me I was lucky to even exist in their world. Birthdays came and went without gifts. Family portraits were taken with me standing off to the side, cropped out like a shadow. My room? The dusty attic, complete with spider webs and winter drafts. When guests came over, I was introduced as the helper or the ward. Never a daughter. Never a sister. At school, I told my teachers everything was fine. But I kept my sleeves long to hide the emotional bruises, those invisible marks left by being unloved in a house full of smiles and secrets. I never asked for more. I just wanted to matter. But no matter what I did, good grades, helping around the house, staying silent, they never let me forget. I wasn't one of them. Then one summer evening, everything changed. Grandma collapsed in the middle of a garden party, right after laughing about how she'd never leave a penny to the stray. Turns out karma was listening. She was rushed to the hospital. Kidney failure. Critical stage. The whole family gathered in the waiting room, panicked, desperate, yet still managed to pretend like I didn't exist. Until the doctor walked in, somber but direct. She needs a transplant. None of the family members are a match. Silence. And then for the first time in my life, every single head turned toward me. Me. The one they had ignored, mistreated, abandoned emotionally for 2 decades. Biologically unrelated, but by rare chance she's a perfect match, the doctor said, flipping through the charts. Their eyes widened, not with joy. Need. And that's when I realized I was finally family. But only because I had something they wanted. Not love. Not connection. Just a kidney. I didn't say a word that day. But in my chest a storm was brewing. They thought they could use me like they always had. But this time, I had a choice. And I wasn't going to let it go easily. They came to me like I was some long-lost treasure. The same people who wouldn't let me sit at the holiday table were now knocking on my tiny apartment door. Heels clicking on cheap linoleum, voices sweetened with fake concern. "Sweetheart, we're worried about Grandma," Aunt Cheryl said, holding a casserole dish like it could erase years of verbal wounds. "She's not doing well." Cousin Drew, the one who once poured soda on my science fair project and laughed as I cried, had the audacity to sit on my couch and say, "We've all had our differences, but now's not the time to dwell." Now wasn't the time? Oh, suddenly now mattered. Where were they when I missed prom because no one would buy me a dress? When I got my first period and had to figure it out with a library book? When I cried myself to sleep in that drafty attic for the 5th year in a row? But now that they needed my kidney, suddenly I was family. They offered me everything. Money, property, even Grandma's prized emerald brooch, the one I once touched by mistake and got slapped for. It was like watching a broken slot machine spit out coins, desperate to hit the jackpot. I let them talk. Let them plead. I even let them think I was considering it. Because for once I had the power. "You want my kidney?" I asked, staring directly into Aunt Cheryl's heavily mascaraed eyes. "Tell me who I am to you. Say it." She blinked. "Say it. I suppose you're family." "No," I said calmly. "Say I'm your niece. Say I'm not trash. Say I mattered even before this." She fumbled. Drew looked away. Uncle Carl muttered something about the past being the past. I laughed. Like breaking glass. "You didn't want me before. Don't pretend now." Then I stood up. "I'm not saying no," I said. "But I'm not saying yes either. Not until every lie you ever told about me is undone." And I meant it. If they wanted something from me, they would have to pay, with the truth, with apologies, with respect. No more hiding behind polite family facades. Because I wasn't going to save Grandma's life while they kept killing my spirit. They thought this would be a simple transaction. They didn't know I had waited my whole life for this moment, not for revenge, but for reckoning. And this time the price would be everything they had kept from me. I made them sit at my table. The same table I bought secondhand with tips from waiting tables. The one missing a leg and propped up with a stack of old encyclopedias. Fitting really. Books full of knowledge supporting something that was always falling apart. Just like me. I slid a notepad across the table. "What's this?" Aunt Cheryl asked, her Botoxed brow wrinkling. "It's a list," I said. "Of every lie you told. Every time you mocked me. Every story you twisted to make me seem like the problem." Drew scoffed. "You're being dramatic. We were kids." "No," I snapped, standing so fast the chair screeched behind me. "You were cruel. There's a difference." Silence. I sat back down and stared them all in the eye. "You want a part of me?" I asked. "Then you give something back. Start talking." Out loud. It started small. Cheryl admitted to spreading the rumor that I was a shoplifter in high school. Carl confessed he told Grandma I'd dropped out of college when in fact I'd never even been given the chance to apply. While he sat there red-faced staring at his hands. "You called me adopted garbage, remember?" I said. He looked up slowly. "I was a kid. And I was a child trying to feel loved," I interrupted. "You weren't a kid. You were a weapon." Tears welled up in his eyes. But I didn't flinch. Because I needed them to feel this. To really feel this. "Keep going," I said. "You haven't earned my yes, yet." Cheryl started crying next. Real tears this time. Not for Grandma. But for herself. For the version of her that was unraveling under the weight of guilt. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because I want to know," I said, voice shaking now. "If you're sorry because I'm your last hope or because you finally see me." There was truth. Ugly. Brutal. Honest. And it hit them like a tidal wave. Because the girl they used to push around, hide away, talk over, she had grown teeth. She had grown wings. And she was no longer asking for a seat at the table. She was the table. When they left that day, my kitchen felt hollow. Like the past had been scrubbed out with bleach and left to dry. I didn't give them an answer. Not yet. Because I wasn't done. I needed to visit Grandma. The woman who raised me, then rejected me. The one who held the power in the family. The one who once told me I was lucky she took me in like I was a stray. She was the queen in their twisted little castle. And now her life depended on mine. It was time to look her in the eyes and say all the things I never dared to say. Because this wasn't just about a kidney. This was about finally being seen. The hospital smelled like bleach and regret. I hadn't walked these halls in years, not since I visited my birth mother on the psych floor. The woman everyone said ruined my life, even though it was their cruelty that finished the job she started. But this time I wasn't here as a helpless girl. I was here as a woman with power. Grandma was in a private room on the 5th floor, hooked up to monitors, her skin paper-thin, her mouth cracked from dehydration. She looked smaller than I remembered, less like the fierce matriarch who ran Sunday dinners like a dictator, and more like a broken clock ticking slower by the day. She blinked when she saw me. "Emma," she rasped. My real name. Not that girl. Not her. Not the mistake. I stepped closer. Her eyes filled with tears. "You came," she whispered. "I haven't said yes yet," I replied. "Calm. Controlled. A storm in pearls." She tried to reach for my hand, but her fingers trembled and dropped back onto the blanket. "I didn't know," she said weakly. "I didn't know they hurt you like that." I sat in the chair beside her and stared. "You knew," I said. "You just didn't care. You let them treat me like trash because you believed I was." She looked away, ashamed. "You told me once," I continued, "that blood doesn't lie. That family sticks together. But when my blood didn't match yours, I became disposable." A tear slid down her cheek. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared that loving you would make the others hate me. I chose peace over truth." "Then don't expect peace now," I said. She turned back to me, eyes watery but focused. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking. "You didn't deserve any of it. Not the names. Not the shame. Not the way I made you feel like a burden when you were the only one who showed up when it counted. For a second I felt my throat tighten. Because I had wanted to hear that for so long, and yet now that it was here it felt too little too late. You called me a mistake, I whispered. Say it again. She flinched. Say it, I pressed. You weren't, she said more firmly this time. You never were. I stood. I don't need your apology, I said. But you need my kidney. So here's what I'm offering, I'll help you. But not for free. Her eyes widened. You're going to buy my kidney? She croaked. No, I said. You're going to earn it. How? I pulled a folded envelope from my purse and placed it on the tray table. Inside was a written statement. A confession. Every lie, every cruel act, every cover-up. Signed and notarized. An admission of what they did to me. I want this read out loud, I said. At the next family gathering. In front of everyone who called me a burden. Her face crumbled. Please. I shook my head. I'm done being the quiet one. If I give you life, then I rewrite my own. The monitors beeped softly. And then she nodded. A weak, trembling nod of surrender. I walked out of the room without another word. Because that day I didn't just walk away with power. I walked away with something far more sacred. My dignity. The day of the family gathering felt surreal. It was the same backyard where I once sat alone at the kids' table, while my cousins whispered about how I wasn't really one of them. The same grill smoke wafted through the air. The same folding chairs. But this time, everything had shifted. I walked in wearing the burgundy dress they once said made me look too loud. My heels clicked against the concrete like thunder. And this time, nobody dared to laugh. They were all there. Aunt Michelle with her ever-judging eyes. Uncle Raymond with the loud opinions and louder mouth. My cousins, the golden ones, college degrees, expensive weddings, lives wrapped in neat little bows. But none of them could donate a kidney. None of them could save Grandma. Only me. The girl they called adopted trash. The mistake. The outsider. Grandma sat quietly in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap, looking frail and ghostly but clear-eyed. And on her lap she held the envelope. The confession. The truth she had once buried with shame and pride. My heart pounded as she tapped the side of her glass with a spoon. Everyone, she croaked. I have something to say. The chatter faded. No one expected what happened next. She opened the letter and began to read. She read how they mocked me behind my back. How they locked me in closets when I cried. How they denied me food when they thought I was being ungrateful. How they laughed when I asked who my father was. How they called me charity. Every detail, every knife they drove into my back, laid bare. At first they looked stunned. Then the fidgeting started. The side eyes. Aunt Michelle whispered something and got shushed. One of my cousins stood like he was about to walk away, but Grandma raised her hand. Sit down, she said, stronger than I'd heard in years. He kept reading. She told them how I slept in the garage one summer because there wasn't room in the house. How she let them spread the rumor that I had mental issues, when all I needed was love. How I was made to apologize for existing. And then she looked at me. Tears in her eyes. This woman, she said, her voice cracking, was the only one who showed up. The only one willing to save my life. He turned to the rest of them. And if I die, it won't be from kidney failure. It'll be from the shame of knowing I raised you to be so cruel. Silence. Not a word. Not a breath. They couldn't look me in the eye. Because I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. I was the one holding the mirror. They saw themselves and they didn't like what looked back. Afterwards I walked into the kitchen to get a drink and one by one they came. Aunt Michelle tried to hug me. I stepped back. Uncle Raymond mumbled an apology. One cousin said, I didn't know it was that bad. I smiled. Polite. Controlled. Distant. Because forgiveness wasn't a gift I owed. It was a throne I'd earned. Grandma rolled up beside me. You didn't have to make me do that, she said quietly. I did, I replied. Because I wasn't the only one you hurt. You poisoned the whole tree. But maybe we can still save the roots. She nodded. You're stronger than all of them. I looked out at the yard full of people who once laughed when I cried. I always was, I said. Recovery wasn't just about healing from surgery. It was about healing from years of silence. From every slammed door, every cruel nickname, every time I was made to feel like a mistake. The transplant went well. Grandma's body accepted the kidney. Her strength returned slowly, but so did her voice. The soft-spoken woman who once stood by and watched the family mistreat me began to speak up. She refused to let them rewrite history anymore. When my cousins called and tried to pretend like we were close, she corrected them. When my aunts tried to brush over the past with forced smiles, she shut it down. I almost lost her, she told them. And you don't get to pretend she didn't matter now that she's proven you wrong. But I didn't do it for them. I did it for myself. I rented my own apartment. Finished my degree. Took back every piece of myself they tried to bury. And I did something that stunned the entire family. I legally changed my last name. Not to hide from them, but to stand apart. To build something that couldn't be tainted by their bitterness. A name that wasn't tied to whispered insults and stolen childhoods. The local news caught wind of the story. Young woman saves grandmother who once rejected her. It made headlines, not just because of the medical miracle but because of the emotional one. People reached out to say they'd felt the same. Discarded, disrespected, underestimated. And they saw in my story something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not every fairy tale ends with reconciliation. Sometimes it ends with rebirth. I didn't get a perfect family. But I got peace. I got power. I got purpose. And every time someone calls me by my new name, it's not just a word. It's proof that I was never the problem. I was the survivor. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. New episodes drop every single day. Don't miss what's coming next.